for the next episode. I can't wait to get home and turn my TV on. I'm ready for the next episode. Got my snap shoes off, no remote control. I'm ready for the next episode.
Hi guys, welcome to next episode with your host Nick.
And I'm Jess.
And today we're going to be discussing how to die alone.
Yes.
So, Jess, can you give them like a quick story on how we chose this show as the next show to cover?
Well, we went over several shows that felt really heavy. Like they were really good shows, but they had like a lot of harsh themes, a lot of some had some violence, a lot of murder, things like that. So we needed a palate cleanser, something to kind of lighten the mood. So I suggested one of my comfort shows, which is How to Die Alone, as a palate cleanser.
This show did not cleanse my palate. I'm going to say, and I say that as I really, really enjoyed the show, but there was a lot of seriousness. It's a comedy.
It's a comedy. After your reaction, I went back and looked it up. I'm like, no, it is definitely listed as a comedy. Some places say dramedy, but and I think that's fair.
It's a comedy. I'm not saying that it's not a comedy, but it deals with a lot of heavy stuff. This could not be a comfort show for me. Like, how do you define like your comfort show?
Honestly, I kind of fall into them. It's a show that feels comforting for me to watch. So like even way before we decided we were going to cover this show, I watched it and then I immediately watched it again. And then I just kept watching it again. I've actually watched the show so many times. I can't even tell you how many times I've watched it. And that's what makes it a comfort show to me. That when I can't think of anything else to watch or I just don't have the energy to start something new, I rewatch this show. It's one of the shows that I rewatch. I have several comfort shows. But that's what a comfort show is to me. Something about this show is comforting. Something I can relate to. So let me give a brief overview. The show follows Melissa, who is an airport worker. Her life is a total mess when we start the show. She's lost the love of her life a couple years ago, and he's getting married, and it just kind of puts a tailspin on everything. She has a near-death experience, which then pushes her to transform her life. It is a comedy set at the airport, but I don't know. I think so. I say that to say, I think Melissa, the main character, who is very much a fat Black woman, and that is very much a part of who she is in the show. I think just seeing that is comforting to me. Okay.
Because I agree with your definition of comfort shows. I do, like, it is something predictable, I think is what it's about. Like, I've watched my comfort shows every year for X amount of years. I know exactly what's going to happen, even if a show is tense, because I already know the ending. I still find comfort in it. So yes, we do have the same definition. I guess this show for me would not be a comfort show. Mm-hmm. And I think it's for the same reason why you find it a comfort show is the same reason it could never be a comfort show for me. I do relate strongly with the character, mm-hmm. but her life is in such a mess that it gives me anxiety.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It like, you know what I mean? Like that feeling of being stuck and everything is falling apart and having to build yourself up from the ground. It gives me, even while I'm enjoying watching the show, it gives me intense anxiety. I worry about her. I worry about her choices. The choices that she makes, I would never make those choices, which typically is not a problem for me. Mm-hmm. With other characters, but I think it is so easy to put myself in her shoes that when she does something that I would never do, I'm like, what are we doing here? Our life is already a mess. We've already got all of these issues. Why are you making it worse? What are you doing? So yeah, that it's like when I was watching this show, I had to call you. And I'm like, you said, and also I would like to point out, she does not have a near-death experience. She dies for 3 minutes. That is not a near-death experience. That is a death experience. She just happened to come back.
She came back to life. That's why she's not dead.
And it's also in the first episode. And so the way you describe the show, like, oh, this is my comfort show. It'll be a palate cleanser from all of the heavy shows that we have been watching. And whereas in some ways it's not as heavy as the shows that we've been watching because it does have a comedy basis, she dies
I,
in the first episode. And
you were gonna take that so hard.
it traumatized me for so many
Mhm.
reasons. And so I'll get more into the reasons why the death traumatized me later on.
Mhm.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, I had to call you and say, are you sure? Am I watching the right show? Because I don't think I thought, like, when we talked about the show, I'm like, oh, it's someone who needs a change in their life. And I thought I was gonna be watching a show about like this woman who like goes on like this traveling around the country, finding herself, or maybe around the world, having these experiences, and they were gonna change her outlook on life. And then when I get there and I start the show, and I'm like, this woman is like, this is gonna sound terrible. She's kind of a loser. Like, she's kind of like a loser.
Mhm.
And I'm just like, what are we doing here? What are we doing? I did enjoy the show. I do love the character of Melissa.
I do too.
But it was a shock to my system because it's not what I envisioned the show to be. And you know what? Honestly, I don't get shocked that often
Mhm.
these days. So I guess it was a good experience.
Yeah.
But it really kind of threw me for a loop.
Yeah, I know. You definitely took a lot of it. I guess to me, like it balances the heavy moments with with comedy. Like so, there
Hmm.
it just always there. It feels light, even when we're dealing with something that's really heavy or dark. And that's why I'm like, I guess I did not respond that well. Like even the way she's like learning about what happened to her, there it is. It's comedic. She wakes up in the hospital. The doctors are rounding on her, like teaching, and they're saying stuff in the craziest way. So it's funny. It still feels light to me. There's a heavy moment, but there's always going to be a light moment right afterwards. I don't know. I just
Yes. I mean, the show, like, because the show literally that we were watching right before this,
hmm
we had to take a break from because it was so
hmm
heavy. Um, and so, yes, this show is, like I said, this show is a comedy, but it was for me, I guess, it was like trauma first, levity second.
hmm
And I think when you watch it, it's levity first and trauma second.
yeah. I mean, even sometimes the traumatic parts are still intertwined with the comedy.
But do you like, that's so interesting to me because a lot of times we are so aligned
hmm
with how we experience things.
Yes,
It's just like, this is like so interesting to
it
me that
is.
we watched the same show and had different visceral reactions to it. And this is the show.
Oh,
Like, of all of the different shows we've watched, like, this is the show where I feel like I'm on one side of the mirror and you're on the other side. And
mhm.
that's interesting because we both enjoyed the show, but we definitely had different experiences while watching the show.
Absolutely. Because I'm like, it's still a comfort show for me. I still have watched it. I've watched it twice since we've talked about it earlier this week.
I have watched it twice, and I think I would only watch it again if I'm watching it with my husband because I think that we could have really interesting conversations about it.
hmm
And so I would be
See
willing to
what
watch.
he thinks.
I mean, I wouldn't say that I would never watch it again,
hmm
but it's not on my rewatch list unless it serves a purpose. Like I said,
Okay. Well, but there's a season 2 coming too.
I thought it was just a one-off.
No.
Okay, that makes me more happy
hmm
than you know. I know we'll get to that, but I wanted to talk to you
hmm
about, because I thought it was a one-off. I was so concerned about how the show ended.
Yeah.
I have so many questions, so very many questions. So that is very
hmm
exciting. Um, so we'll get to we'll talk more about that later. But that makes me very happy because I don't like, I like closure, and I have, like I said, I have a ton of questions.
Okay.
So that's exciting. That makes me super happy.
Yeah. So, okay, kind of going into So one of the things that I feel like makes it feel light to me is the way the story. So like I feel like this is main actress, the lead in this show is played by Natasha Rothwell, but she's also one of the main writers, showrunners. Like this is her show. This is Natasha's show. And I love the way she tells this story, which also I think adds to the levity for me because there's an element of magical realism in the show. And so like while she's telling these really difficult stories, sometimes it'll break off into a dance break off, or but you're still experiencing what she's experiencing through this, or you can she'll flashback and you'll like it has like a dreamy overview and you go into the flashback or something like that, or even if stuff that has not happened or will not happen, it's almost like you see a representation of her thoughts.
Yes, I was going to say it's her inner monologue made real.
And I love that element of the show. That's also what I love, interesting ways of telling stories. So I love the way that this story is told, which like I said, that adds to the levity for me personally.
So I also enjoy the magical realism. I love magical realism in books. I love it in shows and in movies. So I did enjoy that, and I loved as it was like a way to connect to her emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to tell you my favorite one was when she took the Percocet.
Mine too.
And you can feel the effects of the Percocet, like as she's going through, like it's like this dance that she's doing with like people around her, and you kind of it makes you feel, how the Percocet's making. And here's the thing, I have taken Percocets before, like I had like a tooth pulled, I had like other stuff. I have never experienced that. And I know that there are people who abuse Percocets, and I could never understand that because I'm just like, am I missing something here? It has never been anything more than it kind of dulled my pain. I'm like, why? I've never had this like euphoric experience with Percocets. And I'm just like, I don't know. I also know that I'm not someone who enjoys taking drugs, but it really does. It's not my thing. But when she was taking that, I was kind of like a little bit jealous when like during that sequence, because I'm like, man, Percocets have never made me feel that way.
Right. And I can't say that Percocet specifically, but I definitely have had like drugs that I've gotten after surgeries that made me feel like loopy, like that. You know what I mean? But I enjoyed that too. That is like one of my favorite elements of magic.
The choreography,
the jerkiness movements, the up and down. You know what I mean? How she's seeing the world differently while she's on it, and the sharp change when she starts coming down from the Percocet. I loved that. Oh, I love that one.
Yeah, that was my favorite one. Okay, so I have a question to ask.
Okay.
Being that, there are aspects of magical realism, do you consider the character Elise Robinson, who she meets in the hospital, do you consider her like a magical Negro? And can they be a magical Negro if the person they're also talking to is a Negro?
No, I don't think so. I don't think there can be a magical Negro if this is not if it's one black person talking to another, but this is a black cast. This is a black. While there are people who are not black in the film, it's very black. And I think the magical Negro concept comes from that's that character's only function in a white world. To me.
Okay. But she is Bagger-Vancing her though.
She is, but like I guess I still don't see it as like that trope, because there are other people. There are people who lift her up. There are people who pull her down. It's not like we're in this completely white setting and then this magical Negro comes along and just whose only function is to make the white person's life better. And otherwise you're not in our world. Like all the characters play different parts in lifting her up, pulling her down, all this kind of stuff, but they're all black. For the most part, not all black, but you know what I mean. Like
I know specifically that it doesn't hit all the points of the magical Negro, but like she just kind of, the lady pops in, like drops like heavy, like spiritual kind of like knowledge on her, gives her like a purpose, and kind of is the start of her journey towards better. And then the woman immediately dies.
She does, but her presence is still through the rest of the show.
yes, she does keep her presence through the rest of the show, but once again, it's as a spiritual guide.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
It's going to be a little Bagger Vance, which I don't have a problem with. I don't have an issue with, but I think I think it fits in because of the magical realism already. It's just like that she's like almost like a fairy godmother.
yeah. I like that better than Magical Negro, but yeah, I don't know. Because I think what I associate that trope with is like more of a usury kind of nature of Black people, and it did
Mhm.
not feel like that to me.
I agree, it did not feel like that, but when I saw the show, I'm like, man, can you have a magical Negro if everybody's a Negro?
No,
Is what I thought. Because I'm just like, it felt very magical, spiritual guide.
yeah, and she still can be like an and I think she's supposed to be an inspirational figure. She's supposed to be a guide to them, but like she's not the only thing that changes her either. Like that near death experience still is a big catalyst. And she was unhappy. She was unhappy, and the what is it? What's his name? Alex getting married, her ex getting married, like all of these things happening at the same time fuel this change. It's not just, Elise coming in almost like, you know what I mean? Like the ghost of Christmas past, like you need to change.
Yeah. So since we're talking about everything happening at once, I want to talk about pacing in this show.
Okay.
Because in the first episode, as we say, she dies. But before she dies, she finds out that her ex is getting married.
Mm-hmm.
It's her birthday.
It is her birthday. Yeah, that's true. I forgot that one.
They sent the invitation on her birthday. That irritated me, but whatever.
Yeah.
So it's her birthday, and she finds out that her ex is getting married.
Mm-hmm.
She has birthday plans with her best friend who cancels on her,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how she ends up at home putting together furniture, which leads to her death, even though it was only 3 minutes. And she wakes up in the hospital. And the episode is not even over.
No.
All of that happens, and this is a 30-minute show.
I thought it was 45.
Oh, is it? It goes by so fast.
It does. It does. Like, maybe it is 30 minutes. I don't know. Yeah, the whole thing is like 4 hours. Yeah, so yeah, you're right. 30 minutes.
I'm like, I rewatched the entire season in the time that it took me to meal prep today. I'm like, it's got to be a 30-minute show.
Yeah, that's true.
So, and all of that happens, and the episode is not over, and she's not even done being devastated.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they really pack a lot
Mm-hmm.
in these episodes.
Yeah.
Like, but how do you feel like it was on fast forward? Like, because like, once again, this is my first time watching the show,
Mm-hmm.
and in my mind as I'm watching it, you're telling me this is a comfort show, this is like a light show, like this will give you some, a breather from all the more serious shows. And I'm like, I'm meeting this girl, and I'm like, oh, she seems fun because she's great at her job. And, like, you start out like, oh my gosh, like she's so fun and she's so cool. And then you see the wedding invitation, and you're like, oh man, that's messed up. And then you see, well, she has plans for her birthday, and then you see her best friend stand her up and like, man, that's messed up. And then she dies. I feel like rather violently. I know you said you felt like the death was comedic, but it felt very, very kind of violent to me.
She dies by while she's eating a crab rangoon. She's fighting the rat for the crab rangoon, and in that process, basically an umlaut dresser falls on top of her and knocks her out.
Yeah. The dresser, like, she's turned away, so she doesn't even see it, and she's not standing up either.
Mm-mm.
Is she standing up? And she's not standing up, because I feel like if she stood up, it wouldn't have been so bad. So she's kind of like crouching, and this big piece of furniture falls on her and slams into the back of her head, and her front of her face like slams into the floor. And she's all alone. And the only reason why she did not stay dead is because the neighbor like heard like the crash and called 911. And when the neighbor comes over to see her, they're literally performing CPR on her, and there's blood everywhere.
Yeah.
That was traumatic. So for me, I'm just like, what is this? what are we watching? And so when you're at the hospital, she's waking up. The nurse is telling her, "Hey, you can go home, but someone has to come and get you."
Mm-hmm.
So she calls her best friend, who does not answer the phone because he is on a date, even though he lied to her and told her he was going to a charity function.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what you find out initially is that she's her own emergency contact,
That was sad.
which was the saddest thing.
That was sadder for me than her getting hit with furniture.
Like that, when she said, "Oh, that's my number," like that, I have never experienced anything like that in my entire life.
No.
And I guess that's a beautiful thing to be able to say. But being your own emergency contact is a loneliness that I can't explain. And like that literally broke my heart.
Yeah.
It broke my heart.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's calling her friend. He doesn't come get her. So she eventually calls her brother. And she has to call him several times. And he comes to pick her up. And as soon as she gets in the car, he starts berating her
Mm-hmm.
about how he's upset that he has to come and get her, and the fact that she doesn't have friends who could come and pick her up from the hospital, and she always needs something from him. And so, to a certain extent, I can understand feeling like you are the sibling that is always like doing for the other sibling, and they just don't want to get their stuff together. And it's not that I want to completely disregard his feelings, but there is no way
Mm-hmm.
that I could be in the hospital for anything,
Mm-hmm.
and one of my siblings or my friends would not move heaven and earth to be there.
Yeah.
If I had a splinter, I know that there's 7 people I can call and who will come and sit by my bed while the doctor is like needling in there, and I'm going, ooh, ooh, ooh. And so that, once again, that hurt.
That did hurt. That was hard to watch. The hospital staff offered us jobs while you were giving birth.
They did. They did. You guys were my superstar support team, holding my legs in the air, doing everything. The nurses, like they did like the medical stuff, but that was it. You guys did everything else, and I was never alone for one moment.
Yeah.
From the time I went into the hospital until the time that I left.
Yeah. No, and I do agree with you that this part was hard for to watch. And as a person, like I have a very close community, but even though me and my sibling are not as close as you and yours, there's no way that he wouldn't come pick me up from the hospital if I needed him, and he wouldn't make me feel bad about it at that moment. I'm like,
if anything, your brother would be cracking jokes.
he would absolutely,
but he would never make you feel bad
about needing him to come pick me up from the hospital. That was crazy to me. The expectation that that her friends come get her from the hospital instead of her brother was crazy to me.
Yes. Especially because they obviously live in proximity to each other. Like you live out of
planes, trains, and automobiles, but he's still
right. You live out of state.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean, from your sibling. But that they would still come if they needed to.
Absolutely.
Like I live in proximity to one sibling and not in proximity to another sibling. And whenever I've told like my brother about different things that I've gone through, I always tell him way after the fact. The first thing he says is, "Why didn't you call me?
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't you tell me?"
Mm-hmm.
You know, even my dad, I was telling my dad about like years later, I was telling him about some stuff I went through in a relationship, and he was like, "Why are you acting like you don't have anybody?
Mm-hmm.
Why are you not telling me what's going on?" And I'm like, "Because I don't want you to end up in jail." So no, I can't tell you about stuff when it's actually happening.
Right.
I got to put up like a 2-year buffer on what's going on,
Mm-hmm.
so you don't end up locked up. But I just can't imagine.
No, but let me tell you what I think is funny, because you took and mind you, I told you the scene where she is her own emergency contact was harder for me than her getting hit with the furniture, because that was just objectively sad. But I do find it funny that you take this really personally when you are married with a family and I'm decidedly single. So like the idea, and I just only say that because the idea of dying alone is probably the only thing that bothers me. Is like, dang, if I fall down these stairs,
Yeah.
there is no one coming. You know what I mean? So I get that and I relate with that. But it still seems like you took it so much harder than I did.
I did, and I guess I think it's just, I don't, like, I don't know, there is something so sad, you know what I mean, about her situation.
Yeah.
I think it would be my nightmare. Probably because, like, you know, my husband and I, we're a little codependent, you know, we locked in, you know, and so her situation is like nightmare fuel for me. Like, not having anybody in the world, I've never experienced that.
Yeah.
I've always had somebody, you know, and so I don't even know how to navigate that situation.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I mean, like, even like I said, like I played on being single for the rest, but I'm not getting married again. But even, and I moved very far away from my natural support system. But I have a community here. I just got sick, you know, just like a 10-day quarantine of myself. And people are like, can I send you soup? Do you need somebody to come? You know what I mean? So yeah, that idea of having truly no, like, not even a community. Yeah, that is scary. And part of what I think, you know, is the trouble with her and Rory's friendship, and I know we'll get into this in more detail. It's just like that pressure all on one person. That's a lot.
I have thoughts about that. I knew I felt a particular way for a particular reason, but then I got evidence. So I'm excited to talk about that when the time comes.
Okay. All right. So
He's the worst, and I have evidence to prove it.
I disagree. He's problematic. Okay, never mind, because we're gonna get too deep into that.
It's so juicy.
Right.
It's so juicy. Okay, so we need to like fully set up the premise of the show, because I think we haven't talked about one thing that's very, very important. Okay. So Melissa makes the decision to go to Alex, which is her ex-boyfriend's wedding in Hawaii. She's never flown on a plane before. She has an extreme fear of flying. And so she's decided that she's going to face her fear and she's going to go to his wedding. She is beyond broke. So what she accidentally, when she's leaving the hospital, they give her Elise's bag instead of her own bag. And she books a flight to Hawaii on Elise's credit card.
Yes, she does.
And that was when I'm like, wait a minute now. I'm rooting for you, Melissa. That's the first time I was like, have you lost your mind? Like, what do you think?
Yeah. No, there's definitely some moral issues with Melissa. You know what I mean? There's definitely, but I like that. You know, I like when they don't make the characters perfect. I don't, you know, there are no perfect people. So she is a big part of the reason why her life is the way that it is. And
she is 100% the reason why her life is the way that it is. Now, does she have extenuating circumstances? Yeah. She does. But she honestly is her own worst enemy. And that's after meeting her mama. I still think that she is her
own number two.
Her mom, no, okay, so no, she is her own worst enemy. Number two is a three-way tie between her mama, her brother, and her alleged best friend. It's a three-way tie.
I disagree strongly.
But she is her own worst enemy. I just this is gonna sound, I don't know how it's gonna sound, but I'm gonna say it. I don't know a lot of Black women like her.
Okay. And well, no, actually, okay. Now that I've moved and I've experienced some other parts of the world, yeah, I'm experiencing different things. That's not the Black women that typically are in my circle. And that's not the Black women that I typically, you know, am acquainted with. But I have been made aware that they do exist. But I also like that because one of the things, and I'm pretty sure, so if you don't know, Natasha Rothwell was on Insecure, and which was done by Issa Rae. And I'm struggling to remember whether or not this was an interview with both her and Issa Rae or just Issa Rae. But either way, one of the things that she put out there that I think Natasha also does is not having to be a perfect Black woman.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the elements that I love about this show is that no, she's messed up. She's got issues. She's got some character issues that need to be worked out. You know what I mean? She's got some stuff that she's got big areas needing to grow. Which I like. I like showing different elements that we are not all, you know, because while there's a lot of us who are like superstars and striving as hard as we can against the world that's all constantly fighting us, yeah, some of us are not perfect, and that is okay.
I definitely it's not perfection. It's I don't understand. What are you doing with your life? And yes, everything you said is correct. Everything that you said is correct. But like, I guess there are things that are so like deeply ingrained in me. I'm like, girl, you are 35. Like, did you not go to college? Why don't you have a master's degree? What are you doing with your life? Like, I'm just like, you're talking about like, oh, like you were working at a Thai restaurant as a grown woman. I'm just like, I'm like, she doesn't have any children.
No.
What are you doing with your time? What, like,
This is
and
way life. She is just truly way
right.
life.
And I'm like, this is probably going to sound classist. I don't know. For the class that it seems that she's in, I expect more out of her. You know, because there are other like if you are someone who starts out in a lower class, you may not understand things. You don't have access to things. You have to like it's harder for you. You know what I mean? Like if you are the first person, I'm basing it on the mom who seems to have like herself together somewhat, like not fully mentally, but she seems to be together. Her brother is very much giving college educated.
Yeah, but he also gives me first generation college.
Yes, I agree. But I was the first to go to college, but that made it easier for my sister because I had already navigated it. Like we were literally figuring it out, me and my mom.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And so then when it was time for my sister, it was easier.
It was easier when you and your mom were willing to help your sister. You got a mom and brother who treat her like crap. You know what I mean? Like, yes, for most siblings that would make it easier, but he is hell-bent on, not helping her so that he can continue to complain about her, to me.
You know, I guess that's a good point.
So, like if you don't not everybody reaches that hand back and lift anybody up. You know? I think he likes being the good one, the star, so he can sit there and pretend like he's the best thing in the world and he can complain about her.
And she said that, I think she said, mom didn't put you on a pedestal, but she made sure that I was so low that I would always have to look up to you.
Or that you could always look down on me, yeah?
Yeah, essentially. And so I'm just like, yikes. But yeah, so I'm just like, girl, what are you doing?
But you got to see how both of them do that. So then him going to college won't what to her. Because he does give me college educated too. And she seems like somebody who would have done well in college, but she's had to navigate everything herself. And while he might give her $5 to $10 here and there to make a end meet, he's not going to do nothing that's really going to pull her up.
Yeah, I guess I can see that. That makes sense. So yeah, there's I've been working through the disconnect that I feel with her. As much as I empathize, and then I'm just rooting for her so hard. But then she goes and she does something. I'm like, girl, what are you, Melissa? Melissa, come on.
Yeah, no, she does. She does
credit card. Okay. Another thing she does that I'm just like, what are you doing? She steals her brother's social security number so that he can co-sign on her hospital loan.
Okay, let me tell you why I didn't understand that. This is why I didn't understand that. I'm like, she acted like that hospital bill needs to be paid tomorrow. I'm like, it's a hospital bill.
First of all, you should have told them, "Hey, I don't make that much money," and made one renegotiated that bill
Mm-hmm.
because it was like $30,000, and you didn't even stay overnight. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
She should have called her insurance company and had them negotiate the bill down, or she should have called and said, "Hey, I can't pay this bill." But also, girl, they would have had to chase me down for that money.
Mm-hmm.
All the other bills you got piling up,
Are more important than the hospital bill. They're not gonna put it. They can't put it on your credit. They can't do anything. Why are you acting like this hospital bill is the end of the world? Let that thing sit. It'll
yeah,
be
I didn't
just fine.
understand.
Even like the having to have a credit to do the payment plan. Like,
Mhm.
okay, so I don't have a guarantor, so then y'all just don't want to get your money. The
Right,
hospital eventually will be like, oh, well, we need to, you know what I mean?
right. Because I'm like, you're not taking out a loan
Right.
to pay this hospital bill. I thought, yeah, I didn't understand. Like there is like, but even if you, for whatever reason,
And
she
she
had
told you
to,
about that. She told the dude that she was in the high flyers class. I'm like, even if I had done it, I would never admit that.
no, but it's once again like she's making these decisions, and I'm like, Melissa,
Mm-hmm.
what are we doing here?
Yeah.
What do we? What did you? And I mean, like maybe you should have called your mom and asked her to be a guarantor. Maybe you should have called your mom and tell her that you died for 3 minutes.
The way her mom talks to her, I can understand she never wants to bring anything to her. It's not comfort. You know what I mean? Like, it's not really safe. I mean, and same thing, she didn't ask her brother either. She just stole his social security number because, again, asking them for anything is a lot. But that hospital bill was not an emergency.
It
You
wasn't,
was
and
it's
I
not like
it
they were
wasn't.
holding you in the hospital. You couldn't leave till you paid it.
Yeah, I didn't understand why she let that weigh so heavily
Yeah.
on her
So
back.
yeah, her decision making is very off. But again, like, what is she? You know, she. I think it's hard to connect. It's easy to connect with her on like the surface level because like yeah, both overweight Black women in America. It's you know what I mean. It's a lot. But I think that where the disconnect comes from is that we've always had people in those different steps in those different areas that could give us guys. She has nobody.
Right, and I don't. I guess I just can't. That's really
That's
hard.
the bridge that like so yeah. So you really don't know that that hospital will be fine. And
Hmm.
it's not going to go on your credit. There's nothing they can do but just send you notices.
So there's something that she says reoccurring through the
Mm-hmm.
show. She'll say to someone that they don't really know her.
Mm-hmm.
She said it to Alex. I think she said it to her brother. She might have even said it to Rory, but I'm not sure about that. But my question is, she keeps saying that. Oh, I think maybe even Terrence, maybe. She keeps telling people that they don't know her,
Mm-hmm.
and my question is, does she know her? Does
No,
she know herself?
no, she does not. I don't think so. I think and, like this whole story is her kind of going through this process of journey of getting to know herself, getting to know who she is. But I also think she doesn't show her full self because her self esteem is so low. She does not show her full self to people.
What is she hiding though? I mean, other than her criminal activities,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, what? Because what I
She's
would
not hiding the criminal activity. She tells multiple people all
I'm
of them.
just, but I'm like, what is she hiding?
Mm-hmm.
Because we see her when she's alone. We see her when she's around other people. Through the magical realism, we get like a lot of her thoughts and her feelings. And I don't really understand or see
Because
what she's
I
hiding.
don't I don't know that she's hiding or she just doesn't feel worthy of a lot of things.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like she can't fully be herself or in relationship with Alice because she doesn't feel worthy of it. She doesn't feel worthy of people caring about her. She doesn't feel worthy of people, supporting her. So then she
Mhm.
kind of resorts to some of these tricks and stuff to get her needs met. But she
Mhm.
doesn't feel worthy of people just genuinely caring about her.
And so when she's saying you don't really know me, what she's saying is you think I'm worth more than I actually
To
am.
me.
I'm really worth less.
Hmm.
And if you really knew me,
Hmm.
you wouldn't invest in
She
me.
almost says that exactly when she's describing why she broke things off with Alex. When she's talking to Roy, she's saying, like, I had to break it off with him before he broke it off with me because in 2 months he would know and he would see who I really am and he would leave me.
She also said it's exhausting, like being this version
Hmm.
of me for him. And I'm just like, I wonder, I would have loved a little bit like more understanding because I'm like, you seemed very happy.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And so is that where the pretending is, like, when you're with him, you're pretending to be happier than you really are?
Mm-hmm.
That was exhausting because it seems like you're enjoying yourself. She was like all up in his grill.
Mm-hmm.
So what was exhausting about being that version of yourself? Because being pretending is hard and it's work and it's exhausting. So I'm like, were you not really happy?
Mm-hmm.
Where was the exhaustion coming from?
Mm. Maybe not like being comfortable to be her full self, and maybe so because I I'm not one who wants her to end up with Alex.
Same.
You know, so I think that there's better fits for her on the show.
Yeah.
And whether or not it's that time period that they met in and just missing their moment, which I do think is a big element of it, or herself, and well, I think it's both. Both. She missed her moment with him, but then she also did not have the confidence to or self-esteem to carry off that relationship. You know what I mean? So like she felt so low that yeah, it would be taxing on her because she's constantly like, questioning why he's with her or if he's real and all this kind of stuff. And there's probably a whole bunch of mental stuff going on with her because she cannot accept him that somebody like him loves her.
I don't think that they're compatible.
You don't think that they're compatible?
No, and we can talk more about that when we get into the relationships. But I agree. I don't want them together, and I don't think that they are compatible if she's going to be the person that she wants to be.
Okay. Okay. Well, yes, we'll get into that. Last thing I would like to talk about, just about the storytelling aspect of it. It's not something we talk about, so I'm throwing this at you a little bit. But the music in the show, I feel like, is really good in the storytelling. Like the soundtrack of this show is amazing. But one of my favorite moments of that, and I don't know if you pay attention to the song, but in the moment where she's kind of going through the breakup with Rory, her best friend, there's a show playing. There's a song playing in the background. I think it's by James Blake. It was like in the end, it was friends who broke my heart, and it's like,
Oh, I didn't hear
oh
that.
my god, it's like almost this really kind of ethereal, eerie sounding song that's playing in the background, and then it gets louder as they kind of break up. And there's so many moments like that with different music in the show that I'm just like, the music feels like also part of that magical, nature, the storytelling, all of that. And I love the choices that they made as far as music.
I was just excited to hear Angel's Margarita song in the show.
Girl.
I was so proud of her.
Oh, perfect. That starts off one of the episodes. Give me one margarita. That song.
Yeah.
And perfect choice for that episode. I loved it. Yeah, but like, so did you notice the music?
I did. And so I think I'm right, but was Natasha Rothwell not also a writer on Insecure?
I think so, yeah.
And so one of the things that Insecure did also was they allowed their music to help further the story. And so I definitely picked up on it. And I'm like, oh, I think that's was like if you were going to take any aspect and have any correlation with Insecure, I definitely think using music to further your storytelling was beautiful. Yes, I think it made, like, because they use it in like the magical, like, realism, like vignettes, and just in regular scenes, it did add a layer, because once again, yes, the show was a comedy, but it took me through like emotional roller coasters, and not all of them were bad. Some of them were like just beautiful emotional moments, like when she's on the airplane simulator. Like there were so many emotional moments in
We'll
this
talk about that
show.
moment though, because the wonderful storytelling, wonderful, like just seeing her community, seeing her build that. Oh, it was beautiful. That was one of my favorite moments of the show too.
Yeah, me too. I really, really loved it. And so one of the things we were talking about when we were like in pre-production was we were talking about how healing is not linear. And so in the beginning of the show, the first episode, I would say she's pretty darn near at rock bottom.
Yeah.
And so she's realizing that she needs to make a change. and she's making changes, and you kind of see throughout the season that she's taking step forward, she's taking step back,
Mhm.
she's trying things, she's getting nervous, she's pulled back, like she gets into like toxic kind of behaviors. Like I feel like that tryst with the fruit, the agricultural security guard, like I feel like that was like, to me, getting back to like that her more toxic behavior, because she wasn't looking for anything other than a tryst,
Mhm.
you know, as a way to try to get over her feelings. I feel like for Alex, and you know, so but I think that made a lot of sense to me.
Mhm.
How healing is not linear,
Mhm.
and you're going to have ups and downs, and you may be on a winning streak, and then you may fall all the way back.
Yeah.
So I did like how they illustrated that.
Yeah, I did. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that sort of 2 steps forward, 2 steps back element within the story, because it felt really real. And maybe that's it too, part of the like why it doesn't feel like a palate cleanser, because her movement through this process of healing feels very real, because it's not just this sharp turn up. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
She's going back and forth. She's stumbling with things. She's messing things up. You know.
Right.
Yeah.
I think, you know, there's a common thread, do in the show that says what, do the things that you're afraid of, or do something that's going to make you scared or something like that. And I honestly, like, her situation, I think, touches on deep fears that I have of like being a failure, being alone. You know what I mean? Like her as a character, I think it touches on deep fears that I have.
Mm.
And so I think that's why, like, watching the show, like, my anxiety is like, oh my God, what is she going to do? How is she going to make it? You know, and that's interesting because I have not experienced that in a show. I don't know, ever.
Oh well.
Which, I don't know.
It shows how good this show is. This show is so.
It's a great show. It is. It's just not the show I thought I was watching.
It is not what you sold me, which was.
I thought I was watching a travel comedy about someone who had never traveled before, and she was going to have all of these adventures in all of this different place. And instead, it was like a woman who is completely broken and trying to, like, with her fingernails, pull herself up out of a well, but there's laughter.
Okay. I can't. I can't.
So, once again, cannot recommend the show enough. I think it's a great show. And it's just the fact that my husband was hearing snippets, and like he was like just walking by, I feel like trying to hear more and more. Mm-hmm. Like it lets you know like how good the show is. It's like he's like literally ear hustling the show. Mm-hmm. And he's like, I think I need to watch that. And I'm like, I think you do.
Yeah. I do want to know. Let me know what his response is. But same, you know, I always do my rewatch when when I'm getting my hair done with one of my friends, and so same, like she really enjoyed it, laughed the whole time. We really had a good time with the show, and I was okay. I'm not crazy. It is funny.
So she didn't have any emotional reactions.
Yeah, you know what? Yes, she did. She had an emotional reaction at the one of the same places we did with the not having emergency contact. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm sure there was a few other ones, but that was the strongest one. Oh, and then too, yeah, I think she feels the same way you do about the best friend character.
Yes. As a matter of fact, I think in the next episode, we need to get into relationships. How does that sound?
That sounds wonderful.
All right, awesome. Okay, guys, tune in for our next episode where we're going to be discussing how to die alone, the relationships in the show.
See you next time.
All right. Bye, guys.
I'm ready for the next episode. I can't wait to get home and turn my TV on. I'm ready for the next episode. Got my flash shoes off, my remote control. I'm ready for the next episode.